welcome to the board briefing for the Multnomah County Board of Commissioners. Audience members, I want to start by asking you to please silence your electronic devices. And for those presenting today, please turn on your mic when you begin speaking to make sure that the green light is showing, and then off when you've completed your remarks so the red light is showing. For all presenters, please state your name for the record before speaking or responding to questions. So the first part of today's board meeting is just a chance for us to share some updates on the committee work or the tables that we're sitting at as Board of Commissioner members. And so I just wanted to go around and just give folks a chance to share. We don't always have time to do this, but we had some time on the briefing this morning, so I thought it would be a good opportunity, especially with the beginning of the year, to see where the work is at in the different areas that we're sitting on. So I'll go ahead and open it up, and Commissioner Moore, you don't have to go first. If you'd like to, you can, but
sure.
Okay.
The first update I'll give you is one of my committee assignments is dissolving. So I will be bringing to the commission, it's still being finalized, but a dissolution agreement for the Mount Hood Cable Regulatory Commission. This was a result of Gresham and Troutdale wanting to end that agreement. We're now looking at agreement to partner with the City of Portland for our portion of that, and so that will be coming in the near future. As far as other committee assignments, the first of my time on the Domestic Violence Fatality Review Committee, we have done our first case review and have recommendations. Those have been completed, and now I missed the briefing on the final recommendations, so I'll be catching up on that and bringing the, any policy proposals back for a conversation. We just did the proclamation for, was it sex trafficking we just did? Yes, I sit on that one. And then I also sit on the senior and the disability services consumer groups, neither of which I have up until now been able to attend because they have always been during board meetings, but that time has been moved, so I will now be able to attend, and I look forward to bringing updates from that group, and that is my committee assignments.
Thank you, Chair. I have a couple of transportation committees, JPACT and the R1 Act. JPACT meetings, we've done a lot since our last update. We've since had our DC trip, which I think I shared back with you all some of that lobbying work. The last meeting we really focused on the work plan for this year for JPAC. There is a plan to do another trip to DC. I think folks found it really helpful to meet with the staff, not necessarily that, and our electeds, our delegation was really helpful in thinking through ways to get some transportation funding. Additionally, there was some discussion about the 2026 short session. I think there's some unknown still about if there will be repeal of certain portions of the transportation package. The ballot measure is kind of out there. So there's still some work being done, and I would definitely love to share more updates once we, with government relations, have a plan for session. I do think it's going to be an important part of our lobby day whenever any of us are down in Salem. The R1 Act meeting has been We've had additional community members appointed. There hasn't been a ton of work. I think there's a lot of looking at what is the work plan for that group and how are we, I've been asking questions about, now that ODOT has dissolved the UMO office, the Urban Mobility Office, what does it look like for the major projects in our area? So IBR Bridge as well as Rose Quarter, and both of them are still going to continue on their own separate tracks, but I'll just be very honest, I'll keep bringing it up. Both of those are in my district. They're really critical, I think, workforce opportunities for our community as well. So we'll keep tracking those and share updates. I don't think so I want to make sure, because I'm like, you might have had to cover some of those for me, but.
I was supposed to, I had another commitment for that last one.
Gotcha, okay.
That was great.
Can I ask a quick question, just about the larger projects? So at least in media reports, is that one of the things that might happen to fill the backfill the sort of just general maintenance is from the larger projects. Is that something that they can do without passing a different piece of legislation? So money that's already been sort of earmarked or allocated to a project, or would they have to actually pass legislation to like unallocate it and reallocate it?
Some of this will be, it depends on where it was allocated, if it was in legislation or at OTC. And so some are things that OTC has power over, and some are things that would have to go back to the legislature. So I think it depends on which pot of money and how it was originally allocated. And with the transition at ODOT, I think that's just another factor of how are we engaging with the interim director and making sure we understand their plan as well as how it impacts our local work. A lot of the, and I can say just from working on the interstate bridge, there's definitely commitments of both states in investing in that bridge, but a lot of the dollars were also federal dollars that have been allocated to that project.
Which obviously
now
can
we've
be
since seen,
reallocated.
well, and we've now since seen that the cost estimate has doubled. And so it's really a bigger funding gap than initially thought. So there's a lot more work to happen there. With Rose Quarter, they've shifted to phasing. And so there actually is some work being done now on the project, and they're looking at it in multiple phases so that we can get work started, but continue to look at the larger project. And there's been an ongoing, at least verbal commitment to the cover is critical to this work. And so there is no Rose Quarter without the cover, is the commitment that I continue to hear from ODOT. Sorry, there's so many acronyms, and this is all acronyms on the sheet. The Homelessness Response Action Plan Steering and Oversight Committee. We had a mid-December, we had an event where it was all committees meeting. So we had the Community Advisory Committee, the implementation, and we really just spent time, one, kind of getting to know each other and how each other's work should impact and how we can continue that communication and making sure there's a flow of communication between the three groups. It was also a bit of thinking about the 2026 work plan. So a part of that, the next scheduled meeting is April, but January, folks weren't interested in the adult shelter review, so they'd been asked to tune into our work session. The city's work session didn't happen last week for shelter review, but there is one planned. So folks are being asked to tune into that. February, we'll move to some conversations about eviction prevention. And then March will be behavioral health systems of care is the kind of big item. And of course, any legislative updates that need to happen throughout that. And I think we can share more about the work plan as it gets a little more finalized. I have the Veterans Work Group. So November, we did the proclamation. The bridge was lit up in celebration of our veterans, which was really cool. The most recent meeting, there's some success stories that folks shared, so I wanted to share that here. TPI assisted 500 veterans experiencing homelessness through multiple programs that they run. Our Portland VA Homeless Outreach Coordinator had about 125 folks vouchered. So they were folks who were housed through SSVF, which is Supportive Services for Veteran Families, through TPI, Impact Northwest, and Easter Seals. They've updated the veteran by name list, but they're continuing to work that list. I think folks may remember that was our first by name list in the community when the federal government invested in ending veterans homelessness, and so all of that work and those partnerships continue. We've seen an increase in the usage of the Portland State University Veterans Resource Center, just more groups wanting to come in and access that space, which has been great. It's about 2,000 unique visits last year. And there is some ongoing conversation with that group about priorities for this coming year. I think it won't be surprised that people want to see increased access to housing vouchers as well as shelter availability. There's still discussion about the stand down. That's been something I think I mentioned last year that the group was focused on. It's been hard because it's hard to pay for and there's not a lot, it's a lot of work. So providers are struggling as they're having to cut in other spaces to figure out how or if they could do something like this. So we'll keep you all posted as that conversation moves forward. The Advisory Committee on Sustainability and Innovation, that meeting had their full committee meeting in December. There's some members who are cycling off, so I think we'll see shortly a list of proposed new appointments that the chair is moving forward. And I've shared some of the utility assistance work and other things coming out of that office and that group. And then they're going to work on their work plan. You all should have also seen their annual letter that the AXI sends to us. It was sent to the board for our consideration, and then if you haven't seen it, just let me know and we can make sure it gets forwarded to you. And then lastly, I just wanted to update on Walnut Park, just a really high-level update that that RFP has closed. There is a team that has been put together that is the top proposal, and we hope to be able to share more details as they work through some of the contracting components. But that could be a really exciting project, and I think we've mentioned before here, it's a really cool opportunity to look at how the county can show up in economic development activities. So that's all of my committees, I think. I'm like the SHS, because no, the president's work group's over, so.
Great. Commissioner Graham Edwards.
Sure. Sorry, I'm just, a couple things, just at a very high level. So with the Association of Oregon Counties, the upcoming short session is clearly a focus. Everybody should have received, I think, an invitation to AOC days, and if you're able to commit to that day, it's a great day to show up in the Capitol, just with other counties. We've talked in the past about how sort of Multnomah County can sort of amplify its message and positions if we're in coordination and with other counties. So it's a good day to do it. I went last year, and you have an opportunity to meet with lots of legislators, and not just from Multnomah County. So that's AOC, or the Association of Oregon Counties. So for LPSC, or the Local Public Safety Coordinating Commission, as everybody knows, they are pretrial services, and the pretrial subcommittee is hard at work to work through the very complicated issues that we may be facing if we discontinue closed street supervision and also pretrial services from DCJ. So there'll be at the next meeting a presentation on pretrial services. Also, there has been a project underway looking at data trends, just so we're all operating with the same set of data. So hopefully that will be something not just available to LPSC, but also to the county commission, that will help us sort of inform budget, policy decisions. In addition, this isn't LPSC necessarily related, but I'm sure will impact the budget and other public safety policy decisions, which is we have the grand jury report on corrections that will be coming out, their annual report. I assume it's coming any day now, and maybe the DA can tell us when that is. And then finally, Travel Portland and the VDIF board, which the chair and I sit on. I'm working with the chair, and then other partners with potential state legislation in the short session that may be brought forward on capital improvements to the Moda Center. And that would be with the goal of securing a legally binding commitment from the Blazers to stay in Portland. Something which everybody, I think, has agreed, which would be a good thing for the state and the city and the county. Also working with labor partners on that project as well. Very much being driven by the city, given that they own the Moda Center, and also the state, as they would be both a major investor and potentially also part of a coordinated stadium authority if they made a significant investment. So that will be sort of a lot of work will happen in the next couple of weeks in anticipation of the short session. But the sort of tail of work will be probably over the next several years, given the complexity of the deal. Do you have anything you want to add to that?
No, I mean, I think that, as we've been talking about it, just what is the importance of what is the county's role going to be, what are the asks, and what do we really want to make sure are the expectations that we have of any deal that happens, and what that means for our community and the commitment here and the impact on that. I mean, these are, and I want to thank Garrett in my office. He's done some really good work in looking at other municipalities and how those types of deals have been structured and what they've gotten out of it. And I think that'll be helpful too as we're looking at what things could look like here.
I just want to, sorry, on the Blazers and the Moda Center piece, one of the things that, and I'm sure Garrett did this, but the community benefits and what are if there's going to be, I know they want a new stadium, so what are the local hiring preferences? There's things that I don't know that are a part of kind of city standards on contracts that I think are going to be really important to us. So that would be something I would love for us to be able to talk about as that moves forward.
That's great. So just in a very sort of brief response, so the proposal is for a renovation of the Moda Center versus a new stadium, bless you. And oh my gosh, I forgot to start off with the most important announcement I was going to make, which is to wish Commissioner Singleton a belated happy birthday.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Stevie Wonder,
It's my favorite Spotify happy birthday song, Stevie Wonder.
Thank you.
Sorry, I forgot that. I wanted to start with that. So back to the labor agreement. So what's contemplated or what's been requested, and there's just some of the nuances is because the Paul Allen estate is still the owner, that there's this transition between sort of the current owner and the future owner. So what we understand from the new owner is a renovation of the Moda Center, and it would take place over potentially over several off seasons. And so again, it's a renovation versus a new stadium, and what's contemplated is sort of two parts in terms of requirements. Is one a project labor agreement, and the second a multi-union labor peace agreement, and that would be more on the operating side. And one of the things is that the new owner said he wants a market deal, which would be comparable to other stadium deals in a similar size market. And on the labor side, we think a project labor agreement and a multi-union labor peace agreement, which is more the operating unions versus the sort of capital, that's a market deal. If you look at most cities that have arenas, that's sort of the expectation of both the operator, but also any sort of capital work. And because it's being negotiated, that there is, I believe, a very strong commitment from the other parties that in order to relinquish any sort of revenue stream or provide any sort of capital, that absolutely would need to be required, and that the labor partners involved in this have sort of draft agreements that are very standard, that their expectation that they would sign with the new RIP City Management, which is the entity that manages both the Moda Center, but also the Veterans Memorial Coliseum.
Absolutely, and maybe we can talk more offline, Commissioner, because a PLA and a CBA can be really different documents, and sometimes community benefits are included in PLAs, sometimes they're not. And I think it's really important that we look at some of the community benefit components that I haven't seen traditionally in PLAs here. So yes, and I think we want to make sure that we've got a couple more community-specific things that I think show up in our RWIA that maybe don't show up in traditional PLAs.
Yeah, and just to be clear, anything would come back before this commission. We're a little bit of the smallest partner, so we can put things on the table. I think one of the differences between the county and difference between us and the city and the state is both of those entities very clearly get revenue streams and economic benefits from the Blazers' presence. So, for example, the state gets the income tax revenue from the Blazers and the team, which is not insubstantial. And the city, they have a spectator fund there's a ticket fee and also a whole host of other things. When the Blazers transferred the ownership of the Moda Center to the city, some of the county's benefit went away because one of the things that the county received when when it was owned by the Blazers was, of course, they paid not an insignificant amount of property taxes annually. And so when that shift happened, that went away, not just for the county, but school districts, the port, everybody else who has a sort of a line item on the property tax bill. So we're in a little bit different position from the city and the state, and that they can point to some very specific things. So for the county commission, like what are the things that we can point to that there's an economic benefit, aside from us all being Blazer fans, except for when they're playing Philly. I had to add that in, I know. I know you root for the Blazers every game but one. Right. So that would definitely be something for us to consider. Just there is sort of a different economic relationship that we have than the other two entities, which very clearly receive some finances.
Yeah, and I will say, in addition to that, I think something that we need to be aware of is, depending on how this deal is structured, we may or may not be the smallest, I think that's still under discussion. So what our role is in terms of, the models of, making decisions around this, or what we're going to look like, what this deal looks like for us longer term, is something that's very much on my mind. So I do want to say, as we're having conversations, I think there's expectations of what the county's role should look like, and so for me, it's making sure that there is a balance there. I think a big piece of this is the development rights around the property as well, and how that is structured in some of the either housing or workforce or those kinds of commitments would be aligned with the county's priorities, missions, and the things that we want to see happening in our community. So I think that's one of those things that we'll need to talk about. So more to come on that, but I want to make sure this, so I appreciate you bringing this up, Commissioner Edwards, because I think that this is something that we all are going to have a say in.
I just want to make sure that our WNBA team is also valued in all of this. And
Yep, very much one of the things, so yes, and the Blazers staying in Portland is also very important for, I think, the WNBA's decision to have a team here. In addition, I think it's important that we all remember that the Blazers play about 40 games, and then the rest of the year, there are a lot of things happening there, including eventually the WNBA team, but we have the women's Final Four coming. And so this is not just we have economic activity because of the Blazers being here, but a whole host of other things. And again, what that means to the city and county and state economically. Have you got your season tickets to the Fire yet? Just curious.
Since we're talking about sports, I do want to congratulate the Indiana University Hoosiers for their college championship last night. As a former Hoosier myself, I've been watching more football in the last 5 weeks than I have in the last 5 years.
That might be bad politics.
I know, but
Everybody but you.
well, I have to say I was very much cheering for the Ducks. And then when they were down, then I was able to freely support the Hoosiers without any conflicts. Commissioner Jones Dixon.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Chair. I'll just run through by committee assignments and then just share high level what we're working on as a district office. I'll start with the Library Advisory Board. Most of you know, most of the updates come from just the work that we're doing as far as the updates and the opening of the new library. And Director Lewis is crushing it on that front. It's always encouraging just being in the lab spaces. I've missed the last 3 meetings, but just a sense of community and creativity as it pertains to, we just have great people serving on our committee and board. So shout out to everyone on that committee. The other committee that I'm on or represent the county on is the Workforce Development Board, i.e. Work Systems. Right now we're going through the process of recruiting a new executive director, so I'm serving on the steering committee for that. So we've built out the profile and we will be sending that out to everyone. And then one of the questions that we've been leading with is just the overall functions as far as the youth opportunities and as far as work is concerned, and then also the job fairs. They've been extremely successful on the west side. Now we're as far as the western region, like Hillsborough. We're planning on working with Andrew as far as hosting a summit here in Portland or in East Portland. Other committee assignment is with Greater Portland, Inc. That's centered around just economic development here within the region. Of course, we've heard directly from folks as far as tax burdens. Really, they asked for us to present on just the economic development analysis that we're doing. I told them that it's not ready for prime time yet. Likely it'll be sometime February or March. So I'll tap on you, Commissioner Brim Edwards, as far as support presenting to the board on that front. And then there's been a huge focus on just the work that they're doing from the governor's office as far as the Prosperity and Economic Committee as well.
Commissioner, I saw that they had sent out their annual report, GPI did, but I was curious, and I had asked, I think you're in my office, to reach out to them to just see if they had Multnomah County specific information, because I think their report was very general in terms of the region.
Yeah.
Yep.
I will bring that up tomorrow because we have a meeting tomorrow. I'm sure they can provide that for us. And then more district-specific, we've been building off the success of, Commissioner Stegman. She put together a homeless services committee or group with the city managers that they've been meeting over the last 2 or 3 years. We're centering and focusing the group around just the work and trying to weaving in the overall work around HRAP. There's been a lot of questions around how does HRAP and just our policies apply to how we do work out in East Multnomah County, because there's a lot of moving parts. So Ashley's been leading that work and building off of the engagement work that we did this last summer around signing of homeless resource shelter or center within the district. And then also, I serve on the Future Visions project through Metro. So it's a project that's centered around just the 50-year vision for the region specifically. And one of the reasons why Juan Carlos invited me onto that table is primarily because of like the buildable land out in East Multnomah County. And then also, I'm going to be engaging with your offices to get your input based off of we're laying the foundation of the work now. So more to come on that. And then as far as district-specific items or things that I'm personally focused on, it's two areas still, community safety and economic empowerment. Specifically through community safety, we're looking at just the youth violence prevention work that I started 4 years ago in Gresham, and then also reentry, so the experiences that folks are having coming back, coming home from whether incarceration and then also post-adjudication, even like pretrial work. So that's an area of focus of ours. And then on the economic empowerment front, we're focused on food systems primarily. So connecting with the farmers and figuring out how do we get healthy foods out into not only the schools and out into the communities and leveraging the assets that we have throughout the county. And that is about it for our office.
Great, thank you for all that work.
You're welcome.
I love to hear about the food services work. The food access, yes, food systems access.
I'm sorry, I forgot one thing.
Okay, go for it.
I just quickly wanted to make sure you all were read in that I have an eviction prevention table starting this month. It will include folks from multiple departments because we have eviction prevention dollars in a lot of places, but it will also include some nonprofit landlords and developers so that we're hearing some of their perspective and the challenges. We're going to start with just a bit of a data dump. Here's all the information. Here's how we're tracking things, and here's how people access our programs. But I will definitely share regular updates. But if there's any particular interest in being more in the weeds, please let me know.
Thank you, Commissioner Singleton. So just a couple of things. So sitting on the SOC as well, yeah, I think we had a really good all-group meeting in December. That was the first time that we had done it, where it's required every year, so I'll look forward to doing that again. I think everybody felt the ability to see folks in person and talk about the work that's happening and why we're there, and then what we're planning to move forward with in 2026 was great. And I know that the Steering and Oversight Committee members really appreciated that time together as well. I have been sitting on the Supportive Housing Services Tri-County Planning Body, which had its last meeting last week. So that entity, that table is ending because of the changes that Metro did to the governance structure. It was a really nice meeting. The last meeting was mainly folks just talking about the work and how meaningful it had been for them to be able to be at that table. A lot of people talked about this was the first time they'd ever been at a table where they really got to make decisions. The priorities that were set by the Tri-County Planning Body were really focused on the way that the system needs to be regionalized and what are the investments that need to happen at the regional level to do that. So like landlord, recruitment and retention was something, the data systems were another. So there was several different things. That work still needs to continue. So I know that will move forward in a different entity. And then I also sit on the SHS Oversight Committee. That is one where elected officials are not active participants. They attend the meetings, but they aren't formal members in terms of speaking or voting or anything like that. That meeting has a few meetings left. They're always on Monday mornings, and I'm unfortunately have some conflicts, so I've asked Commissioner Singleton to sit in on the last few meetings of that. They're just going through March, and I think there's only about three left for that. I will say that, again, and that Oversight Committee is going to be wrapping up because of the new governance structure that Metro is moving to. One of the things that I've been working on within our county folks, though, is that we have an intergovernmental agreement with Metro, as does Washington County, as does Clackamas County. And in those intergovernmental agreements, the governance structure of having a TCPB, the Tri-County Planning Body, and the Oversight Committee is part of that IGA. The IGA also contains things like, how the dollars are divided up and everything. So there is still a need to update IGAs in a way that both Metro and the counties agree to these changes and these updates. So they have, like, the council has approved the resolution and the ordinance changes on their side, but these changes that have been made are not yet reflected in any of the IGAs that Metro holds with the counties. And so I just bring that to your attention because I think that as we're continuing these discussions, that is a really important area in terms of what these rules look like and how that impacts the work that we're doing here in Multnomah County as well as the other two counties. So more to come on that as we dig into that a little more. I have been convening a group, we're calling it the Aligning for Protective and Collective Impact, and this was a group of folks from Home Forward, Health Share, Care Oregon, Mayor Wilson's office, Washington, Clackamas Counties, Metro, Multnomah County, obviously, really talking about how we can be sharing information about the impacts that are having because of the federal administration changes, as well as issues that are impacting our budgets and our revenues. So for instance, for Health Share and Care Oregon, figuring when the state was determining what its reimbursement level was going to be for Medicaid, that was a really important thing. We've been having conversations, obviously, about impacts in change of policy for immigrants and refugees or folks' status and policies that are impacting Home Forward, for instance. And so what the work that's happening right now there is that the government relations folks for each of those entities is getting together to have a shared legislative priority list that aligns with the legislative agenda that we have approved as a board. So they're doing some work on that, and when that is finalized, I'll make sure to share it with all of you so that you can see that. But it's really about trying to focus our work in the legislative session on really protecting the investments that are critical to the work that we're all trying to do. So I sit on a couple of committees on NACO. So the Health and Human Services Committee, and similar to Commissioner Moyer's situation, they are scheduled on Thursday mornings. And so I'm not able to attend those, but I will be attending the legislative conference, and so I'm looking forward to participating. They have an all-day meeting on Saturday. That's really helpful. They usually have some policy updates that are really important for Multnomah County in terms of our human services work. And I think I said Health and Human Services is actually Education and Human Services Committee. And then I will be participating on a panel during the conference they have a board that's on, a group that's on childcare, one of the work around childcare policy that NACO runs. And so I'll be on a panel speaking on a panel for that about some of the work that we've done here and the importance of childcare. And then let's see, and then, we're going to talk a lot about deflection coming up next, but the House Bill 4002 leadership team, we actually aren't meeting this month because there's a lot of really good staff level conversations happening between the county and the district attorney's office and our health department folks on what's happening, what we're going to be doing in terms of some of the way that the work looks going forward. So more to come on that when we get those updates. And I think that's everything. So.
Can I ask you a question about the Steering Oversight Committee for the Supportive Housing Services funds? Because even 3 years in, I'm trying to avoid using acronyms. What is the timing? So the timing on the steering committee providing recommendations on specific goals. So there, at the most high level, the goals were around, directionally moving things, and then there was going to be that SOC was going to be coming back with really specific goals in each of the topic or KPIs around very specific topic areas. And so I'm curious what the timeline for that is. And I know that it was connected to the budget. It's just that's like another 6 months, and it's
Yeah, I mean, it very much is tied to the budget. So the goal with getting both this board and then city council to approve the HRAP 2.0 and the changes there were to say like, hey, these are the directional things that we want to see happen for our community around homeless services. And the SOC had already approved them, right? So everybody was bought in at that table too. So as entities who are making these budget decisions and have control over the budgets, align, these are the goals, these are the directional things that we want to hit. So please make budget decisions in alignment to make sure that we can be doing this work that we've all committed to. We aren't going to know exactly how, the specifics of those goals until after we know how much resource we're going to have around all of those things. So from the legislative short session that's happening, our budget decisions, the city's budget decisions, I should say the city's budget decisions, right? All of that is going to be factors in exactly how much we're going to be able to move the dial in the different areas. So if this, depending on where we decide to allocate dollars, right? And so that is where I think that having, being able to see how all of that shakes out, then that will be coming back in late June, early July, June or July time period for this board and city council to be aware of.
Probably both.
And, yeah, both. I mean, yeah, it'll be both. And SOC as well. Yeah. Okay, anything else from the updates?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just one other thing I forgot to just mention, MPAC, which is, or not MPAC, MUCTUC, which is the East Multnomah County Transportation Committee, which is all the East County leaders. So there's a huge, over the next 2 months, we're focused on how can we make it more action-oriented, because there's, just because that's the direction that I've received from the committee members. So we're working on that and super focused on how do we get more funding out to for the roads and bridges out in East Multnomah County. So again, I mentioned it last week. Huge shout out to staff for their help as far as or their guidance as far as putting that together and moving us along. And then lastly, on the youth violence prevention front and criminal justice front, we're tracking closely just the work that Dr. Armstrong Romero is leading around the family engaged case planning, which I'm excited about. So those are my final 2 updates.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Yes, you're welcome.
Great. Okay, well, let's move on to our second agenda item for today, which is around a work session on deflection program. And so I want to thank my colleagues for their interest and attention paid to deflection over this past year. I think all of us, it's clear that we all view this as a commission priority, and I've really benefited from hearing each of your perspectives on what would make a successful deflection program. I also want to thank the partners at the House Bill 4002 leadership table for building a program from the ground up, and the shared commitment that we all have on learning from the process, improving the program as it grows, and appreciate that. The leadership table has been meeting monthly. Discussions around program improvements have come into focus since the program released its one-year results. The leadership table has been considering changes to eligibility criteria since about August. And since then, I've been hearing from both partners in the House Bill 4002 leadership team and, of course, this board about the program itself. So I just want to thank everyone for their interest. I'm going to turn it over to Commissioners Brim Edwards and Singleton for the rest of the interim presentation.
Great, thank you. So this is, appreciate that, and I also want to thank Commissioner Singleton for co-sponsoring the work session today and the previous work session we've had. As we all know, this is our third commission work session since September on the deflection program. Just to recap, the first 2 work sessions, we discussed critical topics such as the definition of successful deflection, program eligibility, current goals, outcome data and strategies, improving data cross-checking between behavioral health and homeless systems, and developing functional technologies to track progress. We've also discussed gaps and barriers in the behavioral health continuum, and those barriers that are barriers to connecting people with treatment services and improving service connections. We've also heard from considerations and information from the chair's appointed leadership team. And so today we'll have an opportunity to sort of just summarize and discuss that, and also discuss a potential draft resolution that should serve potentially as a draft starting point for our discussions. The resolution, which has been posted, does include a lot of the feedback and recommendations from commissioners to date. Both Commissioner Moyer and Singleton released sort of recommendations for things they would like to see as we look at what changes may be made or we may recommend in the deflection program. We also today, I want to thank the department, that our partners in the room or who are online, who either may be able to answer questions we have or provide information as part of this morning's discussion. And with that, we'll turn it over to Commissioner Singleton for some opening remarks as well.
Thank you, Commissioner. And I, again, also want to thank you and your team for partnering on this work. I know it's been a lot of coordination through multiple work sessions and then carrying through the threads that are the pieces we still need to talk about and work through. And so that's really the goal today, is picking up some of those questions that were left unanswered during our last work session, but also to look at, I think the big thing that is a priority for this board is what is success. And so we want to be sure to spend some time there, excuse me, today, and then in some other components of the resolution to see, give just our direction. What is the board really looking for out of this program, and how do we think we can make some alignment? I also know that there's been some good work going on in between our work sessions, and so I see some of our providers in the room, as well as Deputy COO Black, who I think may have some answers to, or should be able to share some good work that's been happening. So just really, I'd love to dive in, and I look forward to the conversation. I will just also shout out that we had a site visit to Seattle to look at some of their deflection work, and I really appreciated getting to spend some time with one of our ADAs who just really, we were able to dig into what they're doing and how the folks are partnering together and it looking really different. So also would love, if there's particular things that pop up as we're talking, please feel free to come up, or we will, of course, do some follow-up. So thank you. And I will hand it to you to start our slides.
Great. So we thought what we'd do is move through the presentation and then open it up for discussion with Commissioners. So next slide, please. And we're just going to start off with a little bit of grounding of the background on House Bill 4002. It's Oregon's framework for the deflection program that we're discussing this morning. It was established in 2024 by House Bill 4002 as a collaborative approach between law enforcement and behavioral health. Multnomah County's deflection program has been in place since September 2024 and is operated by the Health Department's Behavioral Health Division, and I think it's this is a good point to just call out the significant work that the Behavioral Health Division has done to stand up the county's deflection program, just basically from nothing to a program that we have today that's operating. Multnomah County has also committed and continues to commit very significant financial resources to the deflection center. Both the original capital expenditures, but just ongoing operating funds, whether it's for county staff, our contract with Turk House, or just the sort of operating of a facility. So that's another reason why we need to continue to ensure that those resources are used in the most effective way possible to serve the people that we know that we all are focused on, which are those that are hopefully will benefit from having a deflection program in place. As the commission has discussed, the chair has appointed a leadership team that includes representatives from some of the entities that are named in the statute, and also some additional members that are not explicitly named as statute. That group has for the past year, provided recommendations to the commission and also set the eligibility and success criteria. Next slide, and I'm going to pass it back to Commissioner Singleton.
So we have some required partners and some optional partners. Our required partners include the DA, law enforcement, community mental health program, and provider from the Behavioral Health Resource Network. Some optional partners listed in the statute include treatment provider, local mental health authority, tribal government, peer support organization, a court or local government body. Next slide, please. And then there's some optional tracking and reporting data partners, including a first responder agency other than law enforcement, a community provider, a treatment provider, a community-based organization, case management provider, a recovery support services provider, or others including individuals with lived experience of substance use disorder, and this should say a mental health disorder or co-occurring disorders. We know that both substance use and mental health disorders are behavioral health. I also can tell a legislator wrote this because some of these are really duplicative. Next slide, please. So just a little bit of a recap of Multnomah County's first year results. We had 606 visits to deflection as of October of 2025. 92% of those who went into the deflection center self-identified as experiencing homelessness. And then we look at Gresham, the 4D recovery deflection pilot, 130 individuals enrolled between 10/1/24 and August 31st of 25. And just a little bit of the client count at the bottom in that graph. Next slide.
So based on what the commission has heard through its deflection partners and also by its, our past examination of some of the other county programs across the state at previous work sessions, and also from the one-year data briefing from the health department, we know the definition of success varies across counties. So there's not one unified state definition of success. And we also know that other counties have explicit success criteria linked to engagement with treatment services. Multnomah County, in our definition of success, requires individuals to access at least one service referral in their care plan, which may or may not be a treatment service. The basic components in the resolution, and that there's been some discussion about this table, for a proposed new standard for successful deflection criteria include a same-day substance disorder assessment, ongoing engagement with the care coordinator or case manager, and a 90-day documented engagement with substance use disorder and other referred treatments. There's also been some feedback from our partners on that 90-day, maybe it being a 30, 60, 90-day milestone, so it's not so daunting. And I relate to that as my experience as a runner when somebody says anybody can run a marathon, which I think to most people sounds pretty daunting, but if you break it out in chunks and you look at how to achieve incremental milestones that a bigger goal can be accomplished, but also setting sort of realistic and things that seems achievable milestones. Also, you'll see the draft resolution. There's just a proposed starting point for the discussion of this criteria today. Commissioner Singleton.
Thank you. Next slide, please. So you all may remember we had a table with other counties' definitions of success. So this is just bringing that back to help inform our discussion. So those include participant has met all requirements specified in their individualized deflection office or offer. We have one county where the deflection operation teams determine if the person has engaged in substance use treatment, which has different ways that they measure that, demonstrated that they're likely to engage in substance use treatment after completing the program. We have another county that looks at ongoing engagement for a minimum of 6 months, measured by improvement in several quality of life factors, including housing, employment, and drug use. And then we have a county that defines success as 10 progressive contacts that is determined by providers over a 30-day period. Next slide. There's also a desire on this board to improve service connection, whether that's through strengthened case management. We've talked about connecting people to addiction treatment as well as homeless services, including shelters and housing. So this is something that we continue to look at, opportunities to talk about health department and homeless services department investments, opportunities to increase shelter access. I will say something I learned in the Seattle trip that I would change in my original reform proposal is that a low barrier shelter is proving more successful for them than a clean and sober shelter environment. So I think I would be more open about what that shelter environment looks like and make that shift. Making sure that we have safe shuttling to and from the Pathway Center, as well as improving access to medically assisted treatment and detox services. Next slide, please. We also want to look at opportunities to expand access to services, so identifying gaps in the behavioral health continuum to implement strategies so that we can understand where there's gaps and look at potential investments to close those gaps. The Homeless Services HMIS, Homeless Management Information System, is really looking at reaching out to existing programs or case managers that have previously worked with a person. Some of this work and training is one of the things that they have started at the center, as well as they have started looking at getting staff trained to add people to the by name list so that if their entry point with the county is the deflection center, they're also getting connected into the database for homeless services. Next slide. So some of the things for us to discuss, I think, is looking at how do we evaluate shelter and make improvements or expand if needed. We just had our shelter work session, and I think we looked at there's maybe, to me, there's opportunities to look at converting something in the system to serve this purpose as opposed to trying to create something new. Exploring opportunities to repurpose existing outreach capacity to focus on deflection and providing case management to deflection clients. Again, a lot of this comes from learnings from the Seattle deflection work. Exploring more opportunities to fund independent project managers responsible for coordinating all aspects of deflection. And what this looks like is these are folks who are primarily focused on working with businesses and community members, residents, on what deflection means and helping them understand how the work happens so that it's not just a one-sided, we're just looking internally focused, but we're also engaging community. This is something that I found to be, I've never heard us talk about here, and it was really impactful from the conversations we were having there. So that's something we can dig into more. And then explore options to convene case staffing that include an ADA, case manager, law enforcement, behavioral health provider. I think those on the trip who maybe had some initial resistance to the idea of case staffing, we got to actually see that happen, and a lot of those concerns really kind of fell away. So I think that's something we should also consider exploring. Next slide, and I will hand it back to Commissioner Brim Edwards.
Great, and this section is around continuous improvement. And just maybe just to start by saying just the intention of examining and resetting policy goals is fundamentally to improve outcomes for the people that we're attempting to serve. So just to be clear. And also in the sense of in the spirit of continuous improvement, the county's deflection program should be continuously evaluated and evolved as a, what's working well, what should be changed, what environmental factors have changed that need us to involve, and how do we ensure that engagement with treatment services to benefit the individual who's actually in deflection. And to reflect this, the following has been being proposed for consideration as continuous improvement measures. First, explore contracting through unbiased supportive technology that tracks a person's progress through the deflection program and to help manage it. Second, expanding deflection eligibility criteria accompanied with increased completion requirements, including but not limited to the district attorney's consideration of including additional misdemeanor charges and also referrals from additional service providers. And then lastly, additionally, consideration of any new costs that may come with changes or the evolution of the program. That should come forward as a future budget modification, but not to expect changes that have costs, but not support those, because that would just be giving our departments potentially an unfunded mandate. Next slide. So this is, do we have, is that the quarterly reporting? Yep, there we go. This is around transparency and accountability. There has been a lot of community discussion, as you have with any new program, and also I think a lot of scrutiny, just going back to that summer and 2 years ago now, when we had the sort of very dramatic increase in fentanyl deaths, and the chair declared a fentanyl state of emergency. We've seen those deaths move down, but a lot of community interest in care for those individuals. So I think it's important moving forward that we, as a commission, know that both we have an interest in having this be an effective program to serve those who are choosing deflection, and also an accountability to the larger community and transparency, so that they are aware of what the county is doing. So critical to this success, put to both serving the people in deflection, but also being effective stewards of taxpayer funds. The following improvements are being proposed around transparency and accountability. One, establishing quarterly reporting of outcomes data and budget to the county commission. Two, deflection program implementation and outcomes, including what's being communicated to clients, program requirements, and program completion, coordinated through the county. And then third, that policy recommendations, including eligibility and success criteria, come from the statutorily required entities and approved by the county commission. And so those are, again, just proposals for the commission's discussion moving forward. And I'll note that, again, the draft resolution was posted, and it's had a fair amount since it was publicly posted, just feedback, and again, also looked at what had been previously put forward by Commissioner Moyer and Commissioner Singleton as potential changes to the program. And with that, we're ready for a discussion. And Commissioner Singleton, since we didn't discuss in advance how we want to do this, I don't know if we want to maybe give the other commissioners an opportunity to sort of share their high-level thinking and feedback.
Absolutely. I think just one thing I want to call folks' attention to is you should also have received, we got some comment from Daniel Hoover that was emailed to everybody. So hopefully you all have that. And I think additionally, Christopher Campbell sent some feedback. So just so that, want to acknowledge that we have some additional input. Yeah, I think we can dive in and hear from folks about their thoughts, or if there's anything you feel strongly about that we want to talk to. I think we definitely want to get to defining success and what that means for this board.
Commissioner Moyer, do you want to?
I appreciate the work that went into this, and I very much appreciate feeling that many of the things that I brought up are reflected in this. And so I don't have a ton of questions. The thing that I think I have consistently tried to be honest with the public about is, we can't require something we can't offer. And although I would say over the last certainly 3 or 4 years, we've seen increased access in substance use disorder treatment and services. There are still some really big holes that make somebody's journey very, very difficult. So I continue, and I do appreciate viewing everybody's journey as it's going to have some unique elements to it, and, you know, having the ability to define success in relationship to the steps a person takes with what's available to them versus, you know, an arbitrary, you must complete X approach is something that's important to me. I think something that we touch on in here, but you know, I think as we pass this off to our implementers, that is going to be some challenges for us, is particularly the dual diagnosis population, and the lack of resources that is particularly focused on a dual diagnosis that includes psychosis. And so I put that there because I think, one, again, it would be really great if the Oregon Health Authority would work with us, because we certainly do not have the level of inpatient capacity necessary. But also, you know, I think one of the things that breaks my heart, and I'm sure it breaks a lot of people's hearts, is we have and we're not alone, but I do think as a state we are significantly behind other states in integrating substance use disorder and mental health care. We have treated those things as if they are separate populations, and there certainly are people with a substance use disorder who are not experiencing serious mental illness, but for particularly our homeless population who experience serious mental health issues, an overwhelming majority of them are currently also experiencing a substance use disorder. And we don't have a pathway, really. I mean, our inpatient mental health does not do substance use disorder, even though over 70% of the people who are currently inpatient at any given time to treat a mental health disorder have a co-occurring substance use disorder that they tested for. They don't even test for everything, but usually it's methamphetamine is what they test for, and over 70% test positive. And yet we discharge people or stabilize somebody, and there's no direct connection to an appropriate treatment option for them that they're now ready to tackle if they are interested. So I want us to have this conversation just really being very honest about our system, but also, you know, with hope, because I do think there are creative solutions to improving our system and creating as smooth a pathways as possible. You know, some of the things that I look forward to that we can't offer today, but it's certainly our plan to, is just being able to open the door to medically assisted detox any time of day. You know, it's really hard when somebody says they're ready at 10 a.m. and you got to get them through to 6 a.m. That is, and we can talk about, and I completely am in line with my colleagues on, let's have a place so we're not losing that person, because I think every obstacle you put in a path of recovery is an off-ramp from recovery, and I really want us to think through how we support somebody who wants to engage in deflection, making sure that we are filling the gaps in a system that has gaps. But also, there's some areas that we need to really think about. Some of the things that are encouraging that I really want us to have kind of a formal pathways to is housing associated with intensive outpatient. For a lot of people who don't clinically need inpatient, but really do need the stability of a sober and safe place to live, supporting the housing component of intensive outpatient, and there are, I can think of at least 4 providers right now who do a housing with intensive outpatient model. Making sure that those who experience homelessness, we have that bed connection through treatment. But then, I think when we look at how do you help somebody go from treatment to recovery, I continue to say the journey is not over when you walk out the last day of inpatient or IOP or a less intensive treatment program. You have to reestablish a life that is now very different. And that takes time and that takes work. For a lot of people, their substance use disrupted employment, disrupted family, disrupted relationships that are really important. And so giving people the ongoing support, both clinically and through housing and other related services, is an important component in that. And there are models. I strongly support recovery housing that is meets a national certification because of the amount of support services that come with that and the quality that is required. But I think when I talk to people about how we're spending our money and how, what is deflection getting us, there are concrete investments that are not necessarily going to say deflection next to them that really will impact the ability for us to show success. And I think it is all of these holes in our system that we're going to have to get real clever, because certainly we can't fund it all. But we got to make sure that when we require that care coordination or case management, I think you can call it a lot of things, that we are problem solving with somebody through this system. And I think that is where I put my priority and the work, and I really appreciate it being called out around when we get the assessment from behavioral health and we can say, here's what we do have and here are our gaps. Like, that has to be a priority in this conversation moving forward. And that obviously has budget implications, and it has implications for our partnership, because there are things that are going to come up that we don't actually have the authority to do. So those are my comments. I'm really happy with the collaborative approach that got us to this conversation. I'm really feeling like we aren't totally locked in, but we're coalescing. And I think the best possible result will be a negotiated consensus approach forward. So thank you, everybody who's put in, I know, a lot of work on this, and that's, I think it's reflected in this conversation and other work that's been brought forward.
Thank you. So I just want to thank the board for all this conversations that we have, and I agree, Commissioner Moyer. My hope is that with this work session and all the work we're doing, we come together as a full board and we can talk about how deflection shows up, especially in the ways of priorities that we have around our public safety systems, our behavioral health systems, and because this is all going to be important as we lead up to the budget conversations that we're going to be having in a few months as well, and where all of this fits in. I think that the county does an incredible job of serving many people at the nexus of homelessness and addiction, like at the BHRC. Deflection is just one of the many behavioral health programs that deserve our attention as priorities. And so, and I know and we've been bringing in some of these things to this conversation because it really is the continuum. I do have concerns about the resolution as it's written, though, and I don't know if, I think everyone also received an email from Tony Vizina from 4D about some of his, kind of thoughts around this resolution, and they really actually reflect a lot of what I said, that or what I'm thinking in terms of the level of specificity in the resolution for this board compared to kind of the higher level policy desires and improvements that we want to see. And so that's, I'm trying to figure out how we can get from where we are today to that, where we're encompassing some of the intentions of this board, the desires of this board, but really leaving the operational pieces to our health department and other system partners that are responsible for that work. And I will say, the 4002 leadership team that table was set as kind of a conversation around who are the folks that are working in these areas that are most important to have a voice at this table, right? So I think that like Denise Pena for DCJ, right? DCJ actually is, community corrections has a responsibility in the House Bill 4002 legislation for parts of the system, right? Which isn't reflected in who's on the leadership table, but that is reflected in other parts of the bill. So I just wanted to, I know there was like, oh, some people are on there that aren't. Public defenders, right? They're not called out in the bill, but they have a really important piece of the public safety system, and especially the folks that are, a lot of the folks who are going to be impacted by the recriminalization, who have been impacted by the recriminalization of a personal amount of drugs. So, but all of that to being said, it's really the House Bill 4002 leadership team that's the policy decision-making group that sets the course for the deflection program in terms of success and eligibility. That's what's stated in the legislation. That table is very much committed to adaptations to improve the deflection program. That is something that we said from the initial, beginning of the program, like this is going to be about continuous quality improvement. This is going to be about building something brand new and then like flexing it and changing it as we learn more about what's working and not working within the system. And I do want to also call out, and I know this has been said before at this table, but any policy changes that even that House Bill 4002 leadership team group decides on has to be reviewed and approved by the state's Criminal Justice Commission for us to remain in compliance with the grant conditions. So all of that is really important because it is a collaborative, it's multi-jurisdictional, it is multi-governmental process that has gone into how this, how these programs are set up. And policy changes, because they require like funder approval by the CJC, the Board of County Commissioners can't really legally mandate deflection policy changes. So I have concerns about this resolution trying to legislate policy outside of the board's authority. And so that's, I know that was a part of that. The board resolutions, they recognize our board policy, and I don't think it's appropriate for our board to make resolutions directing another multi-jurisdictional body's policy-making authorities. Like, I think that that's just that is something that we have to think about in terms of what our authority is and the role that is set forward for that 4002 leadership team table in the legislation itself. I also, and I just wanted to share this, and I've talked to Commissioner Brim Edwards about this, but my office received this resolution initially from the media. We didn't receive it from anyone on our board, and I don't feel like that was a very reflective of the collaborative way that we are trying to do this work. And so I just wanted to call that out, that I really, I know we want to be collaborative, but I don't know that all offices had equal opportunity to provide input on the creation of this resolution. So I wanted to say that. What I would like to see is us to take into consideration some of the feedback that people took the time to. I mean, we've got 14 pages here from Dr. Campbell on comments on our resolution, as well as Dr. Hoover and Tony and some other folks who really appreciate the work that we're doing and also want to see it done the right way. I know that both the doctors had some concerns about, for instance, requiring the substance use assessment, piece on there, the requirement of treatment, some of these other things that are very, very specific in this resolution that are not necessarily best practices as we're looking at, folks coming into and being ready for health instability through a deflection program. I do think that there's a lot of things that we can decide on as a board through the work that we are going to do for, and as I said, the parts of the program that are once somebody walks through that door, once they have said yes to deflection, in terms of what we are looking at in terms of like making sure our connections are happening within the county to homeless services, to the rest of our behavioral health continuum, the case management pieces and how we can support the work that is going to be happening around that. So I do want this board to lean in those areas, but I'm uncomfortable with some of the things in the resolution that are about this board dictating policy that's actually set up through given to the CJC and the leadership team. I do think that this is the right time to be making changes to improve the program. I think, like I said, this is a commitment that the leadership table has. It's something that we have. We've had now over a year under our belt around this program, and I'm grateful for our chance to have these discussions. But I think that if we can think of a way to either up-level very much this resolution or have a letter come from this board around suggestions that we want to see or things that we want to see to the House Bill 4002 leadership team and the CJC, I think that would be more appropriate. So I'm committed to working on that. I just want to make sure that what we're considering for this board is both appropriate to our authority and also like is going to have the best impact on what our shared vision of what we want to see from this program.
Thanks. Commissioner Jones-Dickson?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Brent-Edwards and Commissioner Singleton for just the presentation and the feedback, and board for engaging in the conversation. I'll just, again, share a few comments, and then I think it would be great to invite like Dr. Campbell and others that are here that do this work on a daily basis. But the thing that I think about, really it's just access and outcomes, and I think I've mentioned to you all multiple times, just I'll just start with my personal story. I have a family member that's been struggling with addiction and trauma for the last 15 or 20 plus years, and currently he was unhoused over the last year here in Multnomah County. He went through for health. He was in and out of treatment, and currently he's in a completely different county, in Tillamook County. Talked to him last week, and I asked him, so what type of feedback do you have? I asked him and his partner. His partner has been with him over the last 2 years, and she's been helping him with his medication and things like that. She's one of the reasons why he's still alive today. They said two things. One, access to the environment, the overall environment, as far as access to drugs, and then also just the system of care. It's non-existent. There's a lot of cracks and holes. So I think it would be incumbent on us to invite the people that are here in this room to provide recommendations, and some of you have already done that. And then actually ask staff to develop a resolution that's built off of that, whether it's a resolution and or a budget note. I want to say thank you to Mark, Anthony, Natalie for just the efforts thus far. We know the system is not perfect, but we're building it. Same thing that you mentioned from the LEAD, you visiting the LEAD program. Again, we have all the pieces here, but we just need to have the right people at the table building out just the work in general. So Dr. Campbell mentioned a couple things. I'll just say it here on the record and then also review some of the things that Dr. Hoover mentioned. You mentioned, Dr. Campbell, what to improve and prioritize. With the temporary site and narrow eligibility, law enforcement referrals were strong relative to those eligible up until December 9th. I think some of it might have had to do with just our overall feedback regarding the program. So just, again, working closely with law enforcement as far as their expectations, not even expectations or struggles or confidence within the program is important. That's something that law enforcement has said over the last 3 years, quite frankly, as far as like how do we know when we're bringing someone to the deflection center is actually helping and working. I've heard that from the behavioral health team as well from the city of Portland. Expand referrals by improving officer buy-in, already touched on that. Avoid case-by-case DA review as a necessary step. Police should adopt a cite and hold in abeyance procedure until deflection engagement fails, as used in Lane and Deschutes County, and only then should the DA be connected to the charge information. Again, that's helpful. As it pertains, actually, I'm not going to even read through all this. We can share this with folks. I think it's really important to have you all here helping us to develop the process forward. And then also you've offered, as far as sitting in on our leadership group, as far as developing the policy, I think that would be the healthiest way outside of what we have going on, what we're doing now, does that?
I do want us to talk about, I don't want us to avoid the conversation of what folks here think success means, because we're seeing proposals from other places, and it doesn't mean that we'll land on something, but I do want us to dig into that before we kind of veer off into multiple conversations, because
Yeah.
I have not felt that there's clear agreement from this board on what that means, and that's part of why I wanted to bring back what we're seeing in other communities. Even if it's not something that we're deciding today, I don't feel like we've been able to say, Multnomah County's board believes success is this.
Yeah.
And that gives leadership team folks the ability to actually have that conversation. And I think that's a really big start for me, is what do we all think that means, so that they can dig into that more as a leadership team.
Yeah, I think for me personally, I've been saying it, having a piece of technology where you can see where folks are at within the continuum as it pertains to access and just in their pathway to recovery and being just contributing members within our society. That way we can figure out where we should be making investments and where we can have direct ask of, OHA or whomever it is, and then also hold us accountable as far as not depending on one arm within the system, whether it's the DAs, law enforcement, us, or what have you. We need to be doing this work collectively together, and then also evaluating with clear information, unbiased data, what's working and what's not working. And I think that's one of the challenges that we've been running into over the last 3 years that we've been engaging in this conversation. So that's high level where I'm at. Thank you.
Great, and I just want to take a moment of personal privilege. Chair, you mentioned that you got the resolution from the media. Because we're a public body and there's requirements around serial meetings, before you received that, I did tell you in a one-on-one meeting that you were going to be getting it, we were going to be giving it to all the commissioners, and you subsequently got it and have had it, I think, almost for a month now, or 3 months. It's been publicly posted, and we have repeatedly asked for, I think I said in the public meeting when we publicly posted it, we're interested in everybody's engagement in the resolution. So I just don't want it to be the impression that we didn't ask for feedback or provide you with. We also need to follow the public meeting rules and not have a serial public meeting, which is the whole reason why we got it publicly posted, so that everybody could discuss it. It could be shared out with other partners, and I really appreciate it, the partners providing feedback to that, but it was not at all done in the spirit of not sharing the resolution. So I think we had meetings also with staff, including in this last week, asking for feedback on the proposal. And I would hope that also when we shared it out, that the individuals in the county would also share their perspective. I think to Commissioner Jones-Dickson's, that's very important. It's also why we have public meetings, so that that can be offered. I think there's two things I want to just address is that we can't change the criteria. Clearly other counties have different criteria that have been approved by the state. And so I don't see that as a barrier of we can't change the program because the state's approved it. They've approved a lot of other counties' different definitions of success. So to me, it's we need to be thoughtful, have agreement, but that shouldn't be, we can't do that because the state hasn't approved it.
Could I build off of what you just said?
Sure.
Yeah, so it's my understanding that the CJC, it's incumbent on us, the board, to determine the path forward. So yeah, it's, yeah.
Thank you. And then,
I was just going to say, so it's the House Bill 4002 leadership team that sends the recommendations for any changes, and there is criteria changes that are definitely being contemplated, and then the CJC reviews those and then approves those.
so I'll just say, that was my actually second point, and then I'll give it. But the second point I wanted to say is that leadership team, it doesn't anywhere say it's that the county chair is involved. So That was something that was constructed before this new commission was here, but from my perspective, I mean, we put in over $3 million to upgrade the site for the center, and then there's $5 million a year being used to support that annually, and I think we as a commission have an obligation to make sure that that's spent the most effective way possible, and again, that we're getting the best possible outcomes for the individuals who have chosen deflection. So,
Go ahead, Commissioner.
Yeah. This has been an ongoing, I think, area of where I think it would be helpful to have some history. I don't know anybody else. There may be a few people in this room. I worked the entire legislative session of 4002 and worked on 4002. So I have a lot of information. Now, I worked for an organization that had some narrow interests, and I can tell you all about the 72-hour civic intoxication hold because I worked on that language. I also closely monitored involuntary treatment-related conversations and felt pretty happy where that landed for the organization that I previously worked for. So I was there every day. I wasn't in every room, but I monitored the bill closely, met with legislators, offered language, like many other people who represented an area of interest. So, I don't understand how the county landed on its interpretation of 4002. And the role of any particular stakeholder. I think the legislature was clear about who should be at a table. And I think that's important because there's not one decider in a community's deflection program. This is not effective if our police departments do not have buy-in. Obviously, the district attorney has to be on board since the district attorney has charging authority. We do not have charging authority. We cannot dictate what charges would or would not be included without an agreement from the district attorney. Where counties have a role, and when funding comes to the county to implement, we have discretion. Yes, the CJC has to sign off on it, and it doesn't work if our partners haven't also signed off on it, but we absolutely have the authority to say, yes, we are accepting this money and we will be doing this with it, as long as we are in agreement with our stakeholders. So, I'm sure I'm not the only person, although this is in my district. I did meet Friday with Buckman Neighborhood Association about this. I've had a town hall on this. This is an issue that's very important in my district. I don't necessarily think it's a good idea for any resolution to be so incredibly specific as to write individual care plans for people. I don't actually think that's what this does, but to say that the county commission does not have a formal role in defining success, defining how resources that are now county resources are used, I strongly disagree with. And I also, from a perspective of what I think is best for our community, which, is not about necessarily, Robert's Rules of Order or whatever, it is really, really important that we be on the same page eventually, which means compromise from everybody, but we all are there with the stakeholders that have a say. Yes, there can be a table of people who meet and talk, but they don't trump our elected bodies. And so for me, I really want to make sure that the end product, since we are all going to be judged on it, I would say a third of my emails are related to this subject. I don't think my constituents would be okay being told there's a work group of designated people, of which I'm not sure if any are elected, who are deciding this. Sorry, like, that is not going to fly in my district. But I think it is best for our community, for us to find a product in collaboration at an elected level, which is a framework, where our key partners have signed off on that framework, and bring that forward, because that communicates to the public that we are committed to this structure, that we all have said, yeah, this is what we are going to now say is successfully doing deflection, and we'll be communicating clearly to the public. Because I worry right now, if I were deflected today, what am I going to be told, and is that actually the same as what's going on? And I don't think that's fair to the public, and I also think make us look like we can't work together. So I really want, and I think it is important that this group of 5, with our DA partner, with whomever from the mayor's office who is point on police policy, with our police partners in our other cities, to be able to land somewhere that we can speak with one voice. Then we can say, go technical experts. And if you come back and you say, this one little piece is not going to work, and here's why, then we can all tweak that.
Yeah.
But I really think this is a leadership moment for all of us to frame where we want to go and then turn it over. And I have worked with the CJC quite a bit. I've read through other counties. I don't think anyone's talking about anything that is not in line with components of other county programs. I don't think we're going to be landing on something that's like wildly different that they haven't already approved. So that is my hope here. It would be best for the county if we could, on a collaborative effort, reach that at an elected level. And then I do trust the people who do this work day in and day out. I do want to incorporate feedback about best practices and all of that in our resolution. But, I think we need to set that standard, and then we need to say to the people who really know this work and who we've asked to hammer it out, hey, show me how you'd operationalize this and what's real and where the hangups are.
And I agree, and I think the other component is there are things that are being proposed that are not funded through CJC deflection dollars, and there's things that I think, and my understanding from what you were saying is there's agreement, there's things that we can do as a county that we have budget authority over all of the different components that are auxiliary, and I would want buy-in from our partners, but I'm not abdicating my decision-making power to them for those components. So I think it's being really clear about which things fall in which bucket, and I do think that we have, particularly by bringing in the partners, going to the CJC to say, hey, we've updated, here's what we're proposing, here's who's bought in. It's a really different conversation than if we just try and ram something through that everybody else disagrees with. So I think it's about the process of what happens from here and how we kind of move those components forward.
And I will say, Natalie and the team does a very good job of, as ideas do come up at that leadership table, of talking about like the realities of the budget that we have. I mean, because the dollars that have been spent on this have been allocated from the state to Multnomah County for the deflection program, and so that's what we've been using. But there are realities of what we've gotten from the CJC and what the program everybody wants to see costs, and how do we right size that? And that is absolutely a part where this board is going to have to say, because we ultimately are the ones that are approving the budget and how those dollars are used.
I just think things are reversed here. I'm going to go back to Commissioner Moyer's comments, is like, I feel like the leadership table, this is the leadership table, frankly. We're the ones who are accountable, who will be approving the budget. And, we're accountable to taxpayers, but most importantly, we're also accountable to the people who are participating in the deflection program, that we're offering them a real opportunity to deflect from the criminal justice system into something that will get them on a path of something better. So from my perspective, I'm not willing to, and I've made this point almost for 2 years, is like a group that the commission wasn't part of forming, that doesn't meet in public, that I've heard different things coming out of from participants of like there wasn't actually alignment on something. I'm just not comfortable turning that over. I do know that there is policy direction we can provide, and then how it gets operationalized is absolutely the work of county staff and the contracted staff as well. I also think that we can't ignore the fact that the district attorney has changed the timeline to 90 days, and like how are we working with that? And if there's an interest in additional charges, how are we working with that? What's being communicated? And a couple conversations last week of like, how is this the new 90-day change that happened on January 5th? How is that being communicated to people who are entering the deflection? Are they being told you have 30 days, which is the county current standard, or is it 90 days? And then, what they need to do. And so I think these are really important conversations that happen now. And I, welcome, and this is just generally how I like to operate, is I like to be told from the people doing the work, what are all the barriers to what we're trying to do? And then it's our job to, I think, block and tackle and go get the resources or whatever it is they need, so the people on the ground who's saying if we want to get to here and these are the barriers, like one of our jobs is to help them like remove those barriers, whether it's, funding, whether it's lack of, partnership from an external organization, or lack of coordination internally, that we should be thinking about how are we taking those barriers away so that the people can do their job day to day, and we can deliver something that we know will improve outcomes. So I believe very strongly that the commission should weigh in and not be a passive participant in the process at all.
So we have about 10 minutes left. I do think that it's important that we get some feedback, and I'm open to folks may need to spend some time with the resolution, the definitions of success, the things that you've seen in from our partners as far as their input. But I just wanted to acknowledge we're coming up on time. There's a couple of things I just want to put on the record is I am not completely bought into redefining success as is written in the resolution. I do want to have conversation and hear feedback from the folks on the ground about some of these other options and what that looks like. There's some language in the resolution in that same section that talks about ongoing engagement and meaningful engagement. I want the providers to tell me what that means, because I think we have to be much more concrete if that's a route we're going to go. And I definitely want to make sure that we're not just hearing from current providers in behavioral health system. I want to hear from folks in homeless services and understand some of the barriers and connection points that would be helpful for them.
I think this is probably the big question, and I have strong feelings and yet I am flexible because there are some realities we have to face. I do think there are some areas that we do agree on that we can build off of. One is, I do think everybody believes that deflection ideally helps somebody begin to address their substance use. And that doesn't always look the same for people. But that level of engaging in beginning to address, and I say beginning because 90 days is not a lot of time. And again, depending on all of the things going on, different people will be at different places, even if they were totally ready and we could line up services in a reasonable time frame. So I do fall more on wanting there to be that engagement with a case manager, and that case manager be given criteria of what counts as meaningful engagement versus some kind of arbitrary progress. You know, one example I think I've talked to some people about is if you have an unresolved health issue, you can't go into detox. That they can't take that liability, and they don't have the right staff on site. So that's whatever that is might take time. But you are taking that step because you have to do that to do the next thing. The thing that I like about a care coordinator or a case manager is that we're also stepping up, that it's not, deflection is not just about the person who's walking through the door. It's about that we are meeting them at the door. And it's a model that's more proactive and less referral-based is really important to me. I really empathize with anyone trying to go into recovery right now, because you gotta be lucky as heck and knowledgeable about a very complex, disjointed system. And I want us to, when we think about what our deflection program looks like, that we are navigators for people. Then if we actually are doing that work and we're opening doors and we're helping line up, then I think the amount of accountability you can ask somebody can rise a little bit. But like, if you try to navigate this stuff on your own, it's, you know, I have known a lot of people who really, really wanted to enter recovery and couldn't get in for 2 weeks for what their assessment was. Cognitively really could not manage having to every day get themselves to a place at a certain time, do a number of hours, find a place to sleep. Like, so although that might not be definition of success, I think of effective deflection, we are meeting them with a service. We are not just saying, here's your list of things, and I'm not saying that's what we're doing now. I'm just saying we will have to resource a higher level of service for somebody in a model like this, and I strongly support that, because I want, when somebody, and I don't expect, and I think the public should not expect that everybody who is eligible for deflection, one will choose it. There are reasons people are not ready. And if they do choose it, some people are gonna go MIA. Do I want us to try to keep following up? Sure. And will that be an unsuccessful deflection? Yes, it will.
I would say not necessarily. This is the piece that I think is really interesting about the Seattle model, is that case staffing often looks like case manager can't find John. Law enforcement actually just saw him at such and such, and so they stay in deflection, but there's that care coordination so they can go re-engage in the service component. So not to say other things that you're saying aren't real. I think there's also a missing piece for us that we again, if we define success as meaningful engagement or something around that progressiveness, there's opportunity there to do more.
Yeah, and Tony called it assertive engagement, and then I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, what does it look like and mean to relentlessly pursue our neighbors that need help in a coordinated fashion, and or manner. So similar to what Leeds knew in Seattle.
I think a lot of what you've described, Commissioner Moyer, is also reflected in House Bill 3069 that was passed this last, where the legislature basically took the time to okay, well, now we've been doing deflection for a while. What are the things that we want to change, and really looking at that definition of success and how we are bringing it forward is going to be important too. And that's one of the things in the findings that we have. I didn't see 3069 reflected in that, and I thought that's an important part of the progress of this work too. So I just am putting that out there.
So just in on the success criteria, if I look at the resolution, I think it is high level. But this is also where we need feedback from both providers, but also the county health staff. But just the three criterias is the same day assessment, the ongoing engagement with the care coordinator, the case manager, and then meaningful engagement as documented by the care coordinator with one or more treatment services as in the substance use disorder assessment within 90 days. So for me, those are high level, and I think also allow for flexibility, but that set expectations for the system. And again, looking at, so to do these three things at a high level, what does our staff need? Do we need to do something different with our, how we contract for assessments so that we do have that ability to do it on a regular basis? And frankly, maybe that is also more a requirement of the county, is what do you need to be able to do that? But I think this is a good starting point and high level enough that it's not getting into the operational details. Absolutely, we need to define meaningful engagement, and I think that's going to need to be defined so that we all know what it is. I mean, a concern I have is right now, people who go to deflection, is it a new definition? Is it 90 days or is it 30 days with the other definition? And so again, we're not defining here what meaningful engagement is, but I would expect that there would be a discussion of what that is and a recommendation so that we can all look at it and yeah, that meets our definition of meaningful engagement. But the resolution doesn't go into that detail or make assumptions of what that is.
And I think it's going to be important to reflect on, the folks who have taken the time to write in, because I know that there's different opinions on the level of specificity that people think are appropriate for this. And we've got some, some of the, again, people advocating for best practices on that, as well as what is in the legislation. So anyway, I know we're about time. I want to just thank the board for this really good discussion. Thanks, Commissioners Brim, Edwards, and Singleton for continuing this conversation. I do think we are going to be able to find some common ground on this. I really do feel that. It's just going to take a little bit more work than maybe where we are right this second. So,
I also think we, because of the changes that have gone into effect, we need to also continue to move the work forward versus dragging it out into the budget process, because again, I feel like people need to, the individuals who are being deflected need to know what the expectations are, and I think we also have an expectation. We are spending a lot of money, and is that the right allocation, or do we need to be doing something different to move forward with? I think, and I want to just, there's one thing I wanted to add about the resolution. One specific change I would want to make is at the very beginning, start with a statement of purpose of why we have a deflection program, and have it be very human-centered. And because this is more of a traditional recitation of the findings, but I think that statement of, because I think that is a grounding statement that I think we all share as a commission of what the purpose of the deflection program, to get people who shouldn't be in the criminal justice system into a system that actually provides care for them and help and support.
So I think, just to kind of close, I think stay tuned. I think you and I, commissioners, should get together and take a look at what updates what we might want to bring back to this conversation with the idea that we're not waiting for the budget, but there's some next steps that we want to maybe dig into and incorporate some of the feedback we've heard. It also is now an opportunity for everyone on the board to even give line-by-line edits, so I do want to encourage you to give us specific feedback about the resolution, if there's items you want to see, and then we can make a plan of action for engaging a bit, I think, with not just behavioral health, but also homeless services, the DA's office, and others on kind of making some updates to this before it comes for any sort of vote.
Yeah, and I do want to say, and this, because I'm sure you didn't mean to do this, Commissioner Moyer, but when we were listing off the different partners, the legislature was very clear that provider voice had to be at the table because of their incredibly important role. And I know we have providers here today and have been at the table in determining what an effective system looks like, right, based on their frontline experience. I also just wanted to clarify, there are ongoing conversations with staff in our health department and the district attorney's office and my office talking about these changes, and that's one of the reasons why we didn't have a House Bill 4002 leadership team meeting this month, is because they're talking about the best way to implement changes and the reality of the CJC having a timeline on when changes are happening. So I just wanted to make sure that you knew that's happening.
I was aware of that happening.
Yeah.
And I would hope, again, I don't think that's in conflict with the resolution because
No,
it's,
not
you're
at
working on a meaningful engagement, which I would hope would come back to the commission so that we all be like, yeah, that meets our definition of meaningful engagement.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to make sure that that was clear because I know that we all want to make sure that people have the right expectations of what's happening with them with the current system. And so I appreciate the DA's partnership and in those conversations that are happening here. So thank you. So more work to come. Thanks everyone for the time and attention. Thanks everyone who's in this room today. We have a lot of folks who are very involved in the system who are here listening in and have provided feedback to that, and we'll look forward to continuing to engage with you. So that concludes today's meeting. Our next meeting is scheduled for Thursday, January 22nd at 9:30 a.m. There being no further business, we are adjourned.